Okay, off we go. So yeah, great having you here. Thank you for joining. Like I said, I believe we have one person who's going to join a little bit later. I understand that normally we'd be doing lives on Instagram to explain what this is. In this case, it's a Zoom, so it's a little bit more private. But I might be sharing this, and yeah. So let's make good use of the time. First of all, why are you here? If you don't mind, if you don't mind me asking, and if you prefer not to answer, then I'll just jump in.
No, I have no problem. I have a very bad relationship with time.
Okay.
I'm always late. I work in the creative industry as a writer and as an editor, and
Hmm.
the more time you give me, the more time I'll take. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I'm constantly struggling with time. I wish I had more time. If I could not sleep, I wouldn't. And yeah, I think it's just I'm interested in the philosophical aspect of time. When you look at it in a non-linear way,
Hmm.
how does one measure time? So I mean, there are many reasons, but I'd love to listen more to what you have to say first.
Okay. So this makes me think that there are multiple things we could do. Um, Today, I was intending to talk about what cosmoenergy is and emotional blockages. I will be doing a workshop specifically on managing time, money, and energy better. And I'm going to be
Sorry,
doing
I must have looked up what you did before. Sorry, yeah, I'm
that's
confused. I'm
that's
confused. Sorry.
that's perfectly fine. I do plenty of different things, so that's fine. We could, given that it's for the time being a one-on-one, we could either dive into time now, or we keep it for later. What would you prefer? I'm fine with both.
Actually, no, I don't know much about what Cosmo Energy is, so let's go into that because I know that you've given some talks before on time.
Hmm.
That could be another. Well, I'm interested in you're talking about blockages. Well,
Yep.
I've been experiencing a lot of that lately, and I'm interested in how the release of certain blockages comes in a very psychosomatic manner,
Hmm.
in ways that are basically deeply. I've done some TRE before, but also ways that are deeply ingrained in the body and seem to kind of form a different memory. Let's say a bodily memory that doesn't necessarily have a narrative or a visual behind it. And so I've
Hmm.
experienced some of those releases myself. I'm interested more in how blockages keep us trapped in similar patterns of behavior
Hmm.
and how to go beyond the consciousness of that to kind of develop new sets of behavior or strategies in our daily lives. So no,
Hmm.
this interests me very much, but I actually don't know much about it. To tell you the truth, I just found out about this talk 5 minutes ago, uh,
Okay.
which is why, yeah, I was curious about what cosmo energy. I'm not sure what it means, so
Okay.
excuse my ignorance.
Sure, sure. So, when it comes to, I'll explain what cosmoenergy is. I'll explain my understanding of traps, like emotions being trapped, and then my understanding of how we create systems around the emotions being trapped. First of all, with cosmoenergy, are you familiar with Reiki?
Oh, I do. I'm a practitioner.
Okay, so Reiki uses one energy channel, correct?
Yes.
Okay, with cosmoenergy, we access the Reiki energy channel and we access about 65 other energy channels. So there's not just one, it's not just Reiki, there are multiple ones. So imagine a Reiki channel, but that is more geared towards, let's say, cleaning blood or working on the liver, and the liver is a place where anger gets stored. Or another one that is good for cleaning spaces, cleaning objects, or another one that is good for removing entities and spirits and so on. In short, cosmoenergy is the whole discipline which covers all of these energy channels. Um, we use about 65, I think. There could be more. It seems some are appearing occasionally. So it's not like 65 is the number. It's the ones that we have access to, the ones that I have access to. I think I counted that I've got 68 or something. And so it's similar to working with Reiki, just the channels are different. The way I work, I can work two ways. I can work remotely. So I do that via video, and it's been really interesting. But the way I normally work is in person with people, working with the bodies. So either just opening the channel, guiding the channel to release, remove whatever should be removed, or finding places where emotions are trapped, and then using energy, specific cosmoenergy channels, to press on the point where the emotion is trapped, so it then can be released. So
Wow.
this ties into the way emotions work. Emotions, I consider them as the dashboard for our life. So whenever we feel an emotion, it is our body trying to tell us how to react to a specific situation. This is Dr. Paul Ekman's work. You can look it up on Atlas of Emotions or Google Paul Ekman, or watch the TV show Lie to Me. That's a lot of fun. That's about micro expressions, how the micro expressions show or indicate when someone is being truthful or is being deceptive. Now, what I understood, having studied Ekman's technique and having studied with my teachers who do cosmoenergy and body-oriented therapy, is if we feel a very strong emotion, such as anger or fear or sadness, it is there to tell us how to react in a given moment. But if instead of releasing it, we keep it buried inside, it gets trapped somewhere in our body. So imagine, for example, that you're a child, that you want something very badly, and your parents won't give it to you. So you have a feeling of anger because you have a goal and there's an obstacle, and the obstacle prevents you from reaching a goal. So you express anger as a child, but I want the ice cream, but I want the toy, I want a pony, I want a unicorn, or whatever it might be. The parents tell you no. You get frustrated, your anger increases. And at one point, your parents get angry to shut down your insistence and say something like, if you don't stop, there'll be a punishment. So the anger you had, you can't express it anymore. You have to keep it inside and contain it. And you can even see when I do it, the body language, I'm sort of doing this. I'm retracting. You're afraid there's going to be a punishment. And you might also feel that you've let your parents down or you've upset them. You don't upset them. I mean, they make it very clear that, children shouldn't upset them. And so there's a combination probably of anger, sadness, and fear. Oh my God, what happens if I upset my parents? Will they kick me out? Will they hate me? Will I really be punished? Will I lose the favor of my parents? And, as children, what we want to feel safe. We want to feel loved. And we don't want our parents to be angry because that can be very, very scary. The emotions, incidentally, these are things that have allowed us to survive for all of humanity. And when we think of it, it's only been 12,000 years since the last ice age. We've been living in cities for, what, 3,000 years? 2,000 years? I mean, Rome was a city. Ancient Athens, yeah, it was a city, but by today's standards was a village. Most of the time we were hunter-gatherers living in caves. I mean, then we can debate if there was a civilization before the last ice age, which there might have been. But for most of humanity, we were just hunter-gatherers, and the emotions help us survive in very dangerous environments. That's why of the 7 universal emotions, 5 are unpleasant, 1 is neutral, and 1 is pleasant. And the unpleasant ones allow us to survive when confronted with danger, whatever it might be, and allow us to survive as humans. The one positive one motivates us, and the neutral one is there to help us not panic if it's not necessary and not get too excited if there might still be danger. The 7 universal emotions being joy, that's the positive one. Surprise is the neutral one. And then anger, sadness, fear, contempt, and disgust. And those are the unpleasant ones. Actually, joy is not the positive. Joy is the pleasant one. I don't like using positive or negative because even anger, sadness, fear, contempt, disgust are incredibly helpful. They're just not very pleasant, which is what helps us keep away from those situations where we feel them. So, sorry, go ahead.
Motivating emotion in these.
I didn't hear you. Could you repeat?
you had mentioned that there was a motivating emotion, or there was a one
Mhm.
of them was the um,
Yeah.
driver.
The joy is the one that reinforces things that are good for us.
Hmm. It's funny because I almost have an inverse relationship to that. When I'm joyful, I don't produce anything. I need to have a little bit of pain to produce good work in my field. And I've always found that actually is quite common
Mm.
amongst many writers, not necessarily artists, but it's almost an inverse. And so I have a very difficult relationship to stress as well, is that I
Mm.
need a high level of stress
Yep.
motivates me to do great things. But I wish I could just do it from a more joyful place, you know?
Yeah. Well, sometimes, not saying it applies to you, but it can apply sometimes. Oops, I hear that the audio is breaking up and sounding a bit weird. No, that sounds okay. Sometimes what it is we, and it can happen when we're creative. So I say that being somewhat creative myself, is that we are driven to be creative and to excel because there's some part of us that believes that we need to earn love, we need to deserve it. So if we're not getting it, it's because we didn't work hard enough or we didn't do enough to deserve it. Um, and that can be a driver, is that we're used to this pattern where we're not getting unconditional love as children. Therefore, we assume that the problem is us, ourselves. Therefore, we assume we have to work harder, and therefore, working hard and suffering as we work or creating stress is a familiar pattern that we feel more comfortable with because it's familiar, it feels safe, even though it's unpleasant.
Also, a lot of us, like maybe high achieving children, were positively reinforced when they did well in school.
Mm-hmm.
And
Pos-
then, yeah,
mhm.
I can totally relate to it listening.
Maybe positively reinforced. Sometimes what it takes, I mean, I remember working with someone who was pushing herself close to having a burnout. And we did some work about what her drivers were, her memories, some childhood trauma. And at one point, it came out that she felt as a child that maybe the reason why her parents were arguing all the time was because she wasn't getting good enough grades at school. She wasn't getting bad grades. It's just that she was getting like 90% or 95% instead of 100%. And so in her little mind, she started believing, maybe if I can get better grades, maybe my parents will stop arguing. Maybe there won't be all this drama. Maybe myself and my siblings will be safe, and daddy won't threaten to leave us, or mummy won't threaten to leave us, whichever one it was. And she always pushed herself that way. Um, that's fear from being a little girl in a very tough situation and thinking there must be something I can do. My parents complained that I didn't get perfect scores at school, so maybe that's why they're fighting all the time.
But so my question for you is that,
Mhm.
we're now, at an age where consciousness is very, I mean, the subconscious is less understood, but, we can consciously go back and create these narratives about why things are, why we behave in certain ways. But so I just basically have a couple of questions for you, if I may. One
Sure.
is, how do we go beyond the understanding where the source of our behaviors and emotions come from to a radical acceptance and change? Like,
Hmm.
how does, I mean, I'm sure it differs according, it's a very broad question. And the
Hmm.
second, what I was very interested in what you were talking about in the beginning in terms of trapped emotions, because for as long as I can remember as a young child, I didn't feel anything. And now I'm in my very late 30s and I'm reacting to everything all the time. I'm constantly emotional, and I have been
Hmm.
for the last, I would say, more than 15 years. I used to be very quiet, very contained, very, no trouble. I'm not that I'm trouble now, but I constantly feel upset or indignant, or, it's minor things like the taxi driver doesn't,
Mhm.
go right. You know, it's like minor stresses that just I'm reacting constantly. I feel like I'm constantly being triggered by the same things that I'm completely aware that, you know, I should just accept that this might happen and then get over with it. But then I
Mhm.
just started thinking, you were speaking today, oh, but when I was young, I remember feeling a bit melancholic, but I don't ever remember feeling angry.
Mhm.
And I'm angry a lot these days. And you know, I lost my job recently. I didn't expect that, and it made me stop. And also, I'm very high functioning, so that is also very difficult because I don't have a middle ground.
Mhm.
It's either I do very little or I do a lot, you know. And so I'm just wondering. So I've been doing a lot of stretching, yoga, a bit of like deep work as well. And you know, I am Reiki second level, but the reason why I stopped, I'm very porous, and I've, you know, I have not worked on people professionally, but you know, I've been trained and I've tried a few things here and there and I've been quite effective. But the reason why I stopped is because there's so much that I actually have not been able to heal myself, that I'm
Mhm.
still trying to figure out because I can't rationalize it. Like that, I know where there's pain in the hips, and first it was the knees, and then it was the hips, and then it moved to the ankles, and now it's back in the hips. And
Mhm.
you know, and whatever the source of the emotions may be, you just made me realize that when I was younger, I was not an emotional, I was not expressive, and whatever it is that I kind of must have kept inside is just like I'm a firecracker now. I'm always feeling something, you know, and it's been quite difficult to ride this wave recently, um, to find a point of stasis where I can just move forward instead of now I have to go backward in order to move forward. You know, I'm sure you
Yep.
understand what I'm saying.
For
It's
sure,
a
I do.
nightmare.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, there are a few points there. So first of all, I think something's important to understand that I realized only a few years ago, but it was a big um, defining moment for me. Was with emotions, we can trap the emotions if we want. So we block them, we keep them, and we pretend that they're not there. The thing is, we don't get to choose which emotions we block and which emotions we let through. So if we want to block anger or sadness or fear for whatever reason, we can do it, but in that case, we're blocking also joy. And a joyless life, there's not much fun. It's like tasteless food. It's a shame. We're here, we're not experiencing joy. So sometimes when we don't experience joy, that's a symptom that the emotion is blocked. Um, I had a interesting experience in Kazakhstan doing some training. That's why I learned this method. At one point, I felt intense joy. I'd just done something that really frightened me, and I managed to do it. And I felt like a little boy dancing around, and it felt so unfamiliar that I blocked it. And that was really weird to think, okay, I'm so not used to joy that when I feel it, I block it, I keep it inside. Fortunately, the next time I felt intense joy, which was about a year later, I ended up doing a little dance that felt amazing. So it's a work in progress. So that can be part of blocking things. When it comes to avoiding narratives, of course, we can have a narrative about I'm like this because of this in my childhood. My experience is we look for narratives as long as the problem isn't solved. Narratives help us rationalize the problem, and usually that doesn't really change very much. That's why I find talk therapy has a purpose. It can help unblock some things, but generally explaining why we have anger inside ourselves, it's just a hypothesis, and it doesn't change the fact that we have anger inside. It's like I like taking this metaphor of saying, if I put my hand on a burning frying pan, I can rationalize why it's burning, but it doesn't change the pain. It doesn't make the pain go away. So what I find is when we're able to release the emotion, whether it's anger, sadness, fear, it's usually those three that are trapped. When we're able to release them, we suddenly don't care about where it came from and about the narrative. Sometimes understanding helps, but that usually comes naturally. So it's a moment where it gets released, and suddenly something clicks and goes, oh, now I get it. And now it's gone, and I don't care anymore because it's out of the body. So,
No, we're doing it every other day.
mhm,
There's a release in a reaction, you
mhm,
know.
yeah. And what what I see also is, as long as the emotion is trapped in the body is trying to find a way to release it. So if we have anger, we'll get angry at petty things, angry at taxi drivers, at a partner who doesn't put the lid on the toothpaste, and this is what something that Jung and Adler were saying, is that life gives us the opportunity to learn what we should learn again and again and again until either we learn it or we die. And after we've died, in the next life, we'll get the same opportunity again. So we might as well learn it now and get it over and done with. And so when we get the same situations coming back, it tends to be that we're looking for it to be able to release something. Maybe the taxi driver is life giving us opportunity to really yell and go absolutely berserk, so that the anger is released on somebody that we're using as a punching ball. With the taxi driver, we know it's a punching ball because the poor chap or poor woman probably has got nothing to do with our deeper problems. But then when it comes to somebody that we see on a more frequent basis, we can start blaming them for things that are insignificant, be it a partner, a spouse, a colleague, an employer. But generally, it's just because we're angry, and whatever behavior we have is a choice, conscious or unconscious. It's a choice. So when somebody's annoying us, we can choose to be angry. We can choose to not be angry. That depends on how much anger we have inside of us. The more anger we have, the more difficult it is to control it. And to me, it's really like imagine a pot of boiling water, and it's boiling, and trying to keep the top on, the lid on, as much as we can. Our goal is to keep the lid on. So when somebody does anything that makes it boil a bit too much and it makes it difficult to keep the lid on, we're more likely to get angry at them, because our goal is to keep the lid on and pretend that everything is fine. But that's a lie. That's not the way things really are. You were mentioning also the pain moving around in the hips, moving around parts of the body. This could be usually actually hips. That could have something to do depending on which side. Typically, if it's on the right side of your body that you have pain, then as a woman, it's that you've got issues related to men. And if it's on the left side, it's issues related to yourself, or to your future, or to your past. And there's specific points around knees, around feet, that can be like surprising. It's really surprising, actually, because when you work with energy, you can be pressing one point, you don't feel anything, and you just move half a centimeter, and it's like somebody's pressing a nail through your body. And then you move back, and it doesn't hurt at all. And then once you've pressed it, so the way we work, actually, when we work in person, we find the points that are painful, we press them so they're really painful. The person screams as loud as possible, and then it's like the pain increases, and at one point it sort of flips and disappears and dissolves. Then the point's
Ah,
just a bit sore, but the pain is gone, and it's
ah.
it's,
That's what you mean.
it's amazing.
Releasing the trapped energy. That's what
Yeah,
you mean.
exactly, exactly.
Because my release is not a release, it's a reactivity, you know. It's, or I do a sound journey and I get overcome by deep, deep, deep sadness and trauma. But there's no, like, I just know that it's there and it's buried and it's very deep, but there's no idea of where or what it is and how it started, you know.
Well, the image I have is like, if you imagine having a weed that's growing somewhere, you can cut off the leaves, but they're going to grow back. The feeling I get working with Cosmoenergy and working with the body, it's faster. But even working via video, having done that now, I realize that sometimes it's just as deep. It just takes more time, but just as deep. The sense I get is that we're digging into the earth, we're getting the roots, and we're pulling the roots out. And once the roots are out, it won't grow again.
Right. Mm. Yeah, the body is this incredible, incredible machine, you know.
Hmm.
It's like you said, it's primitive and yet has extremely complicated mechanisms.
Hmm.
And sometimes, I mean, Reiki taught me that I just need to let the body guide me. And whenever there are pains and there's no scientific evidence for them, I look to other things, you
Hmm.
know, to see what the source is, like where it's coming from. And what, like my knee was at a time when I found it difficult to move forward in my life, and my
Hmm.
ankles, still they hurt me, but they're better. And I've always had troubles with grounding myself. And I
Hmm.
mean, these seem literal to you, but basically I'm talking about, I mean, it's much more profound than it sounds. Like it's just things that you learn,
Hmm.
from the way you go through life. But yeah, it is very interesting. I'm gonna look it up more. Are you based in Dubai? You're not based in Dubai.
I'm not in Dubai currently. I was in Dubai in March, but I left just before the lockdown was coming into effect. And we're talking with Nabila about when it'll be possible for me to come back to Dubai to do more in-person work. So
So what
this
do you
this yeah, go ahead.
sorry, what do you do other than Cosmo Energy in terms of the actual things that you practice on people?
So when it comes to healing, it's Cosmoenergy, body-oriented therapy. So I combine the two, and I combine it also with psychological and coaching tools to talk through situations and issues and help understand them. I find it's just more comprehensive when we calm the mind down a little bit. We work a bit with the body and whatever's trapped, then go back to the mind, back and forth. Sometimes, and it's happened recently, people only want pure Cosmo energy. So we start a session and I work, and that's been really interesting. I haven't been used to it. I've been used to combining, so that's been very cool. And other times, people just want to talk and understand, and that's also it's much more Western. It's a lot of fun. So I do all of that, and then I do more thematic work, like I'm doing with the workshops this month. So next week I'm going to give a workshop on business tools for holistic practitioners and freelancers and people who are thinking of starting a business or are running a business, or this actually can be tools that can be helpful for finding employment. Um, if you want, I'd suggest, for instance, that you. I have to see when we do the free talk. But if you come to the free talk,
Yeah.
I'll be giving some tips that will be also relevant for people who lost their job. We know that the quickest way to earn money is to sell services.
Uh-huh.
Of course, if you can, if you can get paid for spending 1 or 2 hours working with someone now, that's much faster than setting up a business, much faster than finding employment. So you
Right.
can do both of them, generate cash flow. That's the main thing. That's what we really need. And if you know how to generate cash flow, you become much more valuable for any kind of company. And if you're
Mhm.
selling your services as a freelancer to companies, maybe it's easier to do that than to be employed, possibly because you're cheaper. Also, if you can actually help solve their problems, whether they employ you as an employee or hire you as a freelancer, that's just a matter of negotiation. It's just a matter of what's relevant. That the main question is, can you help solve a problem? If they don't have a problem, then you shouldn't work with them. If they do have a problem, then you should work with them. It's in their benefit. And then it's just a matter of how do you lead the conversation in a way where you can figure out if they have a problem that you can help them with. Then how you help them, that really doesn't matter.
I've started. I'm going to be teaching artists on how to I'm starting to I've come up with, but it took me a long time to get over this slump that I had
Hmm.
after, like, not, as much as I complained about the high level of stress, I just recently realized that I thrive on it and I need a bit of pressure to produce.
Hmm.
But it's not that I'm lazy. It's just that I don't know. I have just learned to have this very painful relationship with time and with creativity. And maybe because I'm such a painful perfectionist, the less time I have, then it's easier for me to just get it done and not think about all the other references that I could have. It's just this endless cycle with me. And so I need limits that are imposed, and time has done that for me. You know what I mean?
I know what you
But
mean. A few things to bear in mind here. One thing is that let's say, society doesn't tend to look at levels of productivity in creative industries. So let's say you need a slogan, and I come up with a slogan in 15 seconds. That might be a better slogan than someone else would do in 2 weeks.
of course.
But people go, well, you did it in 15 seconds, therefore it's not as valuable as if it's 2 weeks, which is
Right.
exactly the same logic as saying, I could go to a dentist who could solve my toothache in a minute, or another one would take 4 hours. What do I prefer? Pain for a minute or pain for 4 hours? But we get trapped in these skewed logics. So if we are really productive and you come across as being someone who's fast and you get ideas quickly and you process ideas quickly, high achievers and people on the higher end of the IQ spectrum tend to get unbelievably bored if they follow a much slower pace. So it's a
Yes.
bit like if you have to run 100 meters, would you want to give yourself 3 minutes to do it? Or would you go, I'd rather do it in 20 seconds because at least there's a little bit of a challenge there. Like
There's an
20
energy.
seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not going to do it in 10 seconds. 20 seconds should be easy enough. If you practice, probably 15. If it's 3 minutes, you can probably do that, lying on your stomach. Like you want a bit of a challenge because otherwise life's really boring. So
Yeah.
it could be an element of that. Another thing is you talk about perfectionism. I'm going to share with you a very helpful idea because perfectionism is unbelievably toxic. It's so toxic. I'll explain why. Are you familiar with perfectibility, the notion?
No.
Okay. Perfectibility goes massively against perfectionism. Perfectionism is the idea that if you take something in terms of quality and you rate it between 0% and 100%, you have to be at 100%. Otherwise, it's not perfect. Correct?
Hmm.
So 99% is not perfect.
Right.
50% is not perfect.
Right.
1% is not perfect.
Hmm.
So if you progress from 10% to 80%, you've gone from not perfect to not perfect. So you don't see any difference
Mm.
because your benchmark is always, have I hit perfection? No, I haven't. Therefore, it's not good enough.
Mm.
This one made me think about the childhood thing of, why do people push themselves? Because they were taught they were never good enough. So if they're never good enough, they always have to push themselves harder. Some people think that's the case, like it's a good motivator. Always push yourself harder. The issue here is that there's no barrier in terms of assessment of what is the minimum, what is good enough, and what is desirable and achievable. So you might say the minimum. Let's say you say you're in the creative industry. So
Yeah, I edit a contemporary art publication. At least I used to, and I've been doing that
mhm,
for like 10 years. Not the same one,
okay,
obviously. And yeah, so I work in writing and editing, and it's mostly around art,
okay.
contemporary art.
So let's say that you have a new publication you need to edit. You have an idea of what 100% is. Flawless, absolutely flawless, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Now, let's say on a scale between 0 and 10, you know what 10 out of 10 is? And 0 out of 10 is non existent. So there's no publication. Okay. What is the minimum that a publication should be at for it to be tolerable? Tell me. Just random number.
Uh, 60.
Okay. 6 out of 10. That's the
Six,
minimum. Below that, it's a failure. Okay. What is good enough?
8.
Okay. So now we've got 6, we've got 8. And then anything above 8 is great, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So a
Blows you
perfect,
away. Yeah.
sorry?
The story blows you away. It flows. It's surprising. It's tight.
Okay.
Everything.
Anything above 8 is exceptional. So now we've got 10 is perfect. Below 6 is not good enough. Between 6 and 8, it's okay, not great. And at great, it's really good. And then 9 and 10 are just they're exceptional. Okay. A perfectionist will consider that if it's not 10, whether it's 9.5 or 2, there's no difference. It's just not good enough. So we forget the comparison. Now, the notion with perfectibility is always aimed towards perfection, looks at the distance between where we're at and perfection, and that distance is the part that is perfectible, that can be made more perfect. So, how do you make something more perfect? You remove imperfection. As long as there is imperfection, it is perfectible. So, the whole goal gets to be let me find the imperfection and let me make sure there is less imperfection. And if
Yeah.
there's less imperfection, by definition, we're getting closer. And so,
Yes, and that's the crux of being an editor. It's always removing those imperfections. But listen,
mhm,
before you continue, I want to tell you something very crucial here.
sure.
It's linked with my relationship to time. So
Hmm.
I feel that if I have more time, then I'll go crazy. I'll read all the reviews that were done about that exhibition, and then I will feel I did everything I could to make this the best it could be. No one is perfect. Of course, the story still might not be to my liking, but I did notice a trick. I noticed that even when I have more time, say an extra 2 months, because I'm talking about long form journalism here,
Hmm.
even when I have more time to complete something, I still end up squeezing it in the same amount of time in order to produce that story under duress.
Hmm.
And sometimes when I have more time and I take my time with it, it's not better. It's worse because there's more information in there and it's less tight. So it's more about my conception of time being taken away from me or not having enough time to do things that also comes from a very deep place in my childhood, to the point that even today, when I have a big deadline, I won't go and see people. I won't do anything. I'll just, even if I'm not working, even if I'm blocked,
Hmm.
it's like punishing myself. And then I realize, but actually go and talk to someone and the ideas flow. And it's almost as if I ground myself. And I don't know. I mean, I did have a very strict upbringing and everything. There was a lot of pressure on my excelling at school because I got scholarships, and that's how I made my way through life and through, education. My parents couldn't really afford it, but it's like I just want to kind of, I'm aware of all this. This
Hmm.
is what I mean. Like, I'm consciously aware, and like you said, it doesn't necessarily resolve the problem, but I wish I could find that place where I could just completely unprogram myself, you
Hmm.
know?
Do
Um,
you have a few more minutes, or do you have to leave
yeah,
soon?
yeah, like maybe 5 more minutes. Yes.
Okay. Would you like to do a short few minute Cosmoenergy experiment?
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm very porous, though. I warn you.
Okay, that's fine. Did you drink any alcohol today?
No, I didn't.
Okay, good. So just breathe deeply. Uncross your legs. Make sure legs and arms. Make sure that you've got your left side on the left and the right side on the right. Okay, just breathe deeply. Breathe deeply in through the nose, out through the mouth. Just breathe really deeply. If you need to yawn, just yawn. And if you need to salivate at any time, that's a good sign. That's things getting cleared up. It feels like there's stress associated with work, some fear. Maybe something like if you haven't done all the work, then you're not allowed to relax and enjoy yourself. Without being able to relax and enjoy yourself has to be deserved. Just breathe really deeply, let it out. It's tiring to keep all of that inside, isn't it? How are you feeling?
Good. I mean, so when you started, I felt like something comes through my head,
Yeah.
like a beam of energy. And then I felt a lot of pain in my heart and in my throat, in the back
Mm.
of my throat, which I've been feeling for a while. And I felt a lot of tectonics around my spine. I do have a rod in my spine. I do have scoliosis, so I'm not very balanced on both sides.
Okay.
And then I felt some movement down my spine, straightening it up, but more like a snake would straighten up, so with curves. And
Uh-huh.
then I felt some spiral movements from one hip to the other. I mean, it was pretty powerful experience. I only once did a healing, not a healing session, but something also through Skype. And I mean, I am very receptive. I don't know if you felt something, but I did feel. It's funny when you talked about salivation, I didn't realize I was salivating, but it was precisely at that point that I started to feel like just a bubbling of saliva, nothing
Mm-hmm.
coming out. Just even now, there's still a lot.
That's the lymphatic system that's getting cleaned out, and the saliva has emotions in it. So actually, if we do a full session, that's stuff that we should be spitting out to release the emotions. That's a good sign when we're able to release the saliva. That's the whole system getting unblocked, getting reactivated, so the things are leaving. Uh, your description is really impressive and precise. Many people don't feel very much, but that's really interesting. I'd love to.
Actually, yeah, I think maybe because I've been looking for a healer because I need guidance. Obviously, I can't do this on my own.
Mhm.
Maybe we can look into one-on-one sessions in a way that makes sense for me because also there's just so much coming up for me right now
Yeah.
that I'm just trying to move through it, stretching a lot, but sometimes it really like it's too almost too much. So
Hmm.
there's only so much I can commit to with my also anxiety about work, about home, about all these things. But I
Hmm.
really enjoyed speaking to you because I've been looking for someone who can give me both the talk, the rational kind of, talking through things, because I'm very literary
Hmm.
and I do believe in energy. I think that part of the reason why I've not been able to immerse myself more in the energetic stuff is because I am so embroiled in the intellectualizing of things. Like I need both in my life.
Hmm.
I've not been able to find a balance. So I'm either full on in work in intellectual mode, I leave very little time for myself, for my healing, or like now that work doesn't occupy 100% of my time. I'm almost always committed to doing practices every day, but it means that a lot is arising in me. And even though I have all this pain in my throat chakra, I just keep speaking and speaking. And I always speak my mind and I just say what I think. And sometimes I feel like it's strange that I have this pain in my communication when all I'm doing is just sometimes talking rubbish, all like saying whatever comes to my mind. Like I have no
Yeah.
restraint. And that's where the emotions also pour out through my mouth, So I'm aware of all these things, but I think it would be great maybe to work one-on-one. I really enjoyed the session. And yes, I'm sure that when we do the video, it will be kind of, but now because you're recording this, so I'm,
Mm-hmm.
but basically I really felt something very strong coming through the central axis of my body. And then, so because I have scoliosis, I have a C-shaped spine. So I felt both of my shoulders kind of rearranged to straighten up. One side, the other side is straighter. So they kind of moved, and then my hips, I have a leg longer than the other, and one of my hips is rotated and it's been causing me trouble, which is the left side, which is actually more open,
Mm-hmm.
but it's rotated outside. So I felt them move in a spiral, also trying to, readjust. So I think that could be effective. I'm honestly not sure about doing the touch yet, because I just need to give you background. Before I went into Reiki, I had I was seeing an expert in my home country, Beirut, in Chinese medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And, the thing is, he used to do sports therapy for athletes with injuries, and he always used his hands. I mean, he was a Reiki practitioner, but also did other things, also massage therapy, of course, but
Mm-hmm.
all kind of Chinese influenced. And he could not touch me because there were so much issues, and I would energetic healing for me, and I was
Mm-hmm.
in chronic pain to the point that I couldn't even lift a handbag. Like, that was a weight I was
Mm-hmm.
carrying so much. And I remember leaving his office each time feeling like paper. Like, that's how heavy I was before.
Mm-hmm.
So the only thing about the Cosmoenergy thing, but we'll see, I mean, it might take you time to come back, but basically, because I have this surgery that's gone down my spine, some of my nerves have been severed.
Okay.
So if you touch me in one place, I won't feel it there. I'll feel it somewhere else. And some points in my body are extremely painful,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Okay.
And I've now reached the point where the kind of pain that I'm telling you about is in my bones, in my joints. I'm certain that I have a form of immune deficiency, but I've not tested for, like, I never test positive for any of the immune deficiencies. And then the other day, my hips have been hurting so much, deep in the hips, and sometimes they're affecting my mobility, especially when I sit for a long time. I feel their weight when I get up. So
Mm-hmm.
now it's better because I don't have the office job. But so the other day, I was in bed and, I was like, I should start healing myself. I mean, I have the tools. I felt as if there were modules like blood.
Lost you. Hello. Hello. What's going on? Hello. Sorry, I had
Hi,
a
sorry,
internet problem.
I lost you. But anyway, I'm just giving you background so that,
Yeah.
when we start our sessions, you just have an idea of,
Sure.
like there's
So yeah. So
limitation.
I think I lost you when you're talking about modules or globules.
Oh, yeah,
The
that's the
so
important part. Yeah,
yeah.
that's good.
So the way I'd suggest working. I mean, first of all, if I should work with someone, we find a way to work together. And how we decide how we do it is totally separate. If it's the right thing to do, we find a way. It's never meant to explode somebody's budget, and there's always a way we can figure out something that works for everyone. So if it's
Yeah,
the right thing to do, we'll find a way to do that.
that's right.
And when it comes to working, um, it seems that you're really receptive to working with energy, even remotely, even without video. So if that can
Yeah,
help now, I don't see much point to wait. And then we see what results we get. Working, touching the body. If it's the right thing to do, we'll know it. If it isn't, then we don't do it. It's something we decide together. I'm not dogmatic about it. And for me, it's whatever works and gets the best results as quickly as possible in the way that suits the client. That's what we do. But yeah, I mean, it seems that if you're reacting this strongly, imagine what a 90-minute session could be like. And then
For
we can do them shorter. 90 minutes tends to be pretty heavy, but even like 45 minutes or 60 minutes,
yeah.
it can be interesting to have one, observe how it goes, and then
Yeah.
move on. And we tend to get results pretty quickly with this.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm very, very curious because there is a limit. Reiki, I know what the limits are to it. You need to supplement it with
mhm,
other forms. It's
yeah,
not enough on its own. And like I said, I've not found a Reiki practitioner here, and there's so many limits to what I can do for myself, even though they always say you start with yourself. Now I've reached
yeah,
the point I need help,
I
and
know.
yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to. If you can tell me how is best to reach you, and then, I mean, for me, I think in 10 days now I actually do have quite a lot of projects that
Mhm,
I need to finish, and I'm also taking a course, so in 10 days would be a good time to start,
mhm.
because a lot of stuff has come up with me. I actually do need to speak with a coach, and there's just, you'll see, it's just gonna it's gonna be endless.
It's what I found. It's seldom as endless. When I do the time management um, exercise, one thing I ask people to do is write down a piece of paper everything they have in their mind, absolutely everything. And I came up with
Mm.
this. The first time I did it was with a friend who we were having a chat, and she broke down, started crying, and was just overwhelmed. So I got her to write it down, and I think it took about 3 hours. She took 2 or 3 A3 sheets of paper. She basically filled them up, and she went, "Well, that's it." Like there were a lot of small things, such as repair her socks. What is it? Buy another pencil. Um, but it was everything she had on her mind. And she goes, actually, now that I see what there is, there's a lot, but now I feel that it's manageable. I'm no longer overwhelmed. Um, so there's usually not as much as we think. And with the more mental coaching approach, I use a lot of tools from systemic psychology. And there we consider that any issue should be able to be resolved in less than 10 sessions. And what I observe is that and unless it's things piggybacking on the back of each other, but any individual issue should be resolved pretty quickly, especially when you combine energy and mental thinking.
Yeah.
An image actually that came to mind the other day, don't remember when it was, I was talking with someone about it, is the image, if you're familiar with some video games, of leveling up. You play a character that's at level 1, and then you get experience, and you get to level 2, level 3, level 4. The image I like using nowadays is about leveling up, is making sure we hit a higher level in terms of skill set, competence, removing anything holding us back, and we just level up. And leveling up shouldn't be that difficult. So every time we solve something, the character levels up. And that's the whole point: is that we become stronger and more independent in our lives. Um, yeah,
I
that's
mean, the saddest thing that I've realized is a lot of our limitations are not external, they're internal, you know?
why is that the saddest thing?
Because I mean, all this resistance and all my fight and all my struggle against the patriarchy, domination, authority, all of this ended up being just something that I internalized. And it's a struggle against myself because I find myself imposing the oppression, the, so, which is great, which means I'm in a great place. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not subject to any other person's will. I mean, I chose this life. I
Mhm.
left home and I did all these things, and then it comes back to haunt you. It makes you realize that the struggle first is to be at peace with yourself. And now all the trouble that I'm facing, I don't have work to blame or anything. It's really my own resistance to change,
Mhm.
even though I wasn't in a happy place before. Now that
Mhm.
change is necessary, I'm like, I just need to accept this. I mean, this is actually what I wanted. So, it's just taking me too long. And also, I am my worst critic, you know? So the perfection is more about me approving. And I don't know who the me is, because when I was a child, I certainly, didn't have an authorial voice, but it's really me. Like when I get a bad piece of writing that I need to edit, I get upset and I work on it and I rework it. And sometimes I send it back to the writer and the writer doesn't fix it. And then I
Mhm.
make sure that it's perfect, but I am the one who's judging.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So I want to get rid of this person,
Mhm.
you know? Like but the thing is, it's also a standard that I like to be inspired by writing. I like it to be good. Like I consider it my profession, and I've perfected it. And I won't normally accept anything less, but why do I get angry? The thing is, the anger that comes in when I receive something that's mediocre, I'm just furious,
Mhm.
I did have an editor who was like that, and I loved him. He was great. He taught me everything I know, but the anger is not good. It helps me kind of fix it, but it also, I'm upset when I'm doing it. I'm not
Mhm.
like,
Well, the anger comes with the price. That's the issue. With the anger, we eat ourselves from inside. I mean, the price literally is physically. Then the price can also be socially. We use other people as punching bags for our anger, and we look for ideologies that fuel this or that mirror it. It's usually when I hear people talk about the patriarchy and we dig a little bit, there usually is some element of anger in there and
yes.
some element of I'm looking for something outside of me. And what's quite beautiful is when we solve the stuff that's inside, that anger goes away. So
Like I
it's
told you, radical acceptance. It's not just
yeah.
an acceptance. I have to accept it. It's like you consciously, radically, it's an extreme measure to accept. And I've met people who just are like, this is the way things are. And I'm always resisting, always,
Mhm.
and it started with my parents. And it started so now I only have myself to fight, the
Yeah, and
world.
it's funny because we lose part of the identity, which is there's some kind of external oppression. But the beauty is that when we let go of that, everything else is actually manageable and under our control. And that's, to me, is just is wonderful to think, well, if it's inside of me, up to me to deal with it. And once I've dealt
Exactly.
with it, then I've done something to actually make the world a better place.
I
Um,
think that's where I am today.
that's wonderful. It's not easy to get there. It takes a lot of processing to get to that place. But that's where I like this image, by the way, of the Knights of the Round Table and King Arthur who go looking for the Holy Grail, the secret to eternal life, and they they find out that the Grail is hidden inside a dark, scary forest full of monsters, and they all decide that they have to go and look for the Grail, and each of them has to go inside and find his Grail. And they decide how to get in, and each of them decides to go through the entrance of the forest that seems the scariest to him. And I really like this metaphor because it's where we feel the most fear, that we've got the most things to solve. And the image I sometimes use for my coaching and healing practice is saying, I'll walk you up to the forest, I'll prepare you, I'll train you, but when you go inside, you're on your own. You can come outside whenever you want. I'll help heal your wounds, we'll strategize, we'll think, we'll help you level up so that you overcome whatever obstacle. You're on your own, but you're on your own because you don't need anyone else. You're perfectly capable of doing it. It's not easy. If it were easy, it wouldn't be important. And if it's important, it's not easy. It's because it's difficult that it's so important. And because it's so important, so difficult, and you can do it. And I believe in you. And I know it can be done, and we can all find our grail. But the important thing is when we're facing when you get into the dark forest, we're on our own, and that can be unsettling and scary.
And it's so interesting that you saw that fear when you were doing the session.
Hmm.
You mentioned the fear, then you mentioned something else I can't remember because I was very deep in. But yeah, I mean, I really think it's again, dealing with our demons, dealing with our issues first. And of course, that because as a healer you've had to go through a lot to get where you are
Hmm.
now. And yeah, I mean, in my case, I think the blockages have been so much manifesting in my body that I just couldn't ignore them. And my mom passed away suddenly. I had a very difficult relationship with her, and 2 days later I was back at work. So all these, and I felt a lot of pain, like pain, deep pain in my heart, deep,
Mm,
deep, deep pain. But you know, I just kept going, and I think now, you know, it's toll, you know, just being
mhm,
nonstop for a certain portion of my life and not feeling effective in other portions of my life, and you know, these radical extremes, I'm
mhm,
starting to make sense of them. It's because again,
mhm,
I collapse, and then I, you know, run up the treadmill, and then I collapse again.
mhm,
I always have these phases, and it's like stretches of years and
mhm.
then a few months of a break, you know, but a
Yeah.
non-productive break, a recovery, you know, like as if I
Mhm.
had been on a very bad trip or something. But yeah, I mean, it's again, I think the body always surprises me at how much it can store that we just can't make sense of with our minds, and we need to use other forms of energies and
Yeah.
magnetism and you,
And
yeah.
one issue is that we try to understand it and rationalize it. And like my teachers in Kazakhstan were saying, is when they ask me questions, rationalize. They go, "No, your brain works fine. Your problem isn't your brain. Your problem is that your heart is blocked. Is that all of this is kept inside? That's a problem. Your brain is fine, but you're using your brain for the wrong thing. Your brain is great for computing complex problems and thinking them through. In this case, it's just about accepting what is, and you're not accepting it. And it's there. You've got the anger, you've got the sadness. Just release it. And of course, I was going, I'd like to. How? Like that's the wrong question. You don't think how. You do it. You feel. Don't think. Feel. And yeah, that was life changing to suddenly just release and not justify, not control, just accept things were the way they were and just let go. Um,
So in my case, all I've been doing is feeling, like as I
mhm,
still go through life and things. But so it's almost like the opposite problem, and it's become a reactive. Like, so I'm always immediately responding or feeling what I need to feel to the
mhm,
extreme, but it feels like there is no end. And it's hard for me to imagine who I was as a child that felt very numb,
mhm.
you know? And so for me, it's more a question of the release is constant, and it's like a waterfall, like I can't even stop it. But it's more, I'm trying to find ways to channel, you know,
So
because
I,
when you wake
I'd
up
say,
and you're consumed with
mhm,
despair, you can't function, you call in sick. I mean,
yeah.
that's fine, take a resting day, but in my case, I think I just want to channel it into a way that, you know, not necessarily productive by societal standards, but
Mhm.
my own standards, because I feel completely out of control, you
Yeah,
see my.
so I'd say, one thing to remember, if we take the wheat metaphor, is that when we release little by little, it's akin to simply cutting off leaves on a weed, and it's going to grow back. And that's exhausting because we're constantly just cutting off the leaves, when what we really want to do is uproot it.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
so we often get the feeling, but I'm releasing something, therefore it's better than nothing. It's like, well, if it grows back the way it was, then you're going to keep on doing that. I mean, then it's, Sisyphus and the stone, keep on rolling it up, but you never get really rid of it. So you have to keep on doing it, and that's where it gets really exhausting.
Yeah, because
This
it's
is Yeah, because we're not really making that much progress. This is where I find combining it with the Cosmoenergy work is really efficient. Why it works that way, I don't really know. I just observe that it works. That when we do the work, it seems that deeper emotions come out, even if we do it remotely. That we're able to go in deeper and bring more things out, and we tend to go layer by layer. So one
yeah,
session,
I want to try. I really want to try because
I'd
I
love to.
felt so much immediately, you know. I mean, I
Hmm.
do know that I'm aware of myself. I'm very porous and very receptive,
Hmm.
but I was interested in how the spine, you know, it felt quite almost like doing osteopathy, you know, like it was really kind of working deep. And
Yeah.
I just want to tell you one more thing before you continue. So,
Hmm. Sure.
I've been doing this like energetic retreat with some friends that I know, and most of it is just mobility and a little bit of trauma release. Nothing, no, I've gone much deeper before because it's remotely. But there is one thing that I noticed. There were certain breathing practices where it had to do with long exhales and holds on the empty of the exhale. And I got a panic like an animal that was just about to be caught, like a real fear of death. And it was just, and I don't have panic attacks, I don't have breathing problems, I don't have asthma, but such a panic, like a very animalistic form of fear. Like literally, you know, you're just about to get pounced on, you know, that kind of fluttering, or like a bird that's just been caught, you
Yep.
know. And I couldn't even do half of the breath, half of the containment, you know, empty. Like I just couldn't. And
Hmm.
every time I tried, and knowing that it was, you know, knowing that I had that panic first, you know, you'd think I'd be able to kind of control it. Every time the panic set in again,
Hmm.
and out of my control, like just my body's reflex was just like so scared.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
really don't know. I mean, I don't think I need to know where it comes from, but there's something there that's just like the level of pain and the level of like fear is just so primal, you
Mm.
know?
I know. When we have those emotions, I mean, it tends to be like the really really deep ones. And when we tap into it, it can be really overwhelming. I mean, the first time they worked with me, they found a point in my stomach that had been, I've forgotten about it, but I got massaged once or twice, and that point it felt like somebody was piercing through me with a sword. And when they released it, I had flashbacks of when my grandmother passed away when I was 11. And my parents wanted to be helpful, and they said, "Listen, this is really sad. Try not to think about it." So I'd kept that inside of me, and that was, yeah, it was it's like it felt like the pure emotion, really intense.
And
That
love.
was, yeah, there was suddenly coming out that had been blocked inside, that I'd been so afraid to see. Um, yeah, and gradually we uncovered different places where the emotions were trapped. But I know the feeling of intense panic, or
Yeah.
feeling like you're suffocating. Um,
Yes, exactly. Like you're gonna
mhm,
die, even though you're
yeah,
sitting there just exhaling.
yeah.
Anyways, I mean, I'm hoping that, thank you so much for your time. So
You're
now
welcome. I
you've
really
got,
enjoyed this.
yeah, in a way, you've got all this. In a way, we don't need to do introductions again. So the next time, go
Exactly.
straight into it. But
Mhm.
just let me know, like, how is best to reach you? Do you do WhatsApp so we can schedule something?
Sure. I
And
do.
yeah,
I think I'll see. Maybe the best way is to go through the center. Just be. They've got all my details. I'm going to give them a link so they can schedule directly with me to organize something. If you need to talk about it or just to plan a little bit, I'm happy to do that. And I think what I'm going to do, and I'm talking with them about having special pricing for people who've attended one or more than one of my workshops.
okay.
The workshops might be of interest. So what I think I'm going to do anyway, I mean, you said you're busy for the next 10 days. What I'm
Yes.
probably going to do is record the workshops so that they're available online afterwards if people want to watch them after that.
Great.
Um, but yeah, let's do
What are
that.
the ones that you're doing again? Oh, the sustainable
Sure.
business one.
So the sustainable business, that's the first one. Some of the business tools that are helpful for, well, selling, running your business. It's basically with all of these things, there's so much noise out there that if you want to do it, you hear a lot of people who talk, and they've got all of these things. And what I've noticed so often is that people listen and feel discouraged, demoralized. They can't explain clearly what they should do. They feel that,
Mhm.
they have to write a business plan before becoming a yoga teacher, and they just get discouraged and don't do it. Or when I ask, do you have a business model, they just feel discouraged. And these are things that are, if they're clearly explained, they're simple. The issue is that not everyone who explains it really understands it. And same thing with branding and marketing and sales and social media and all of these things. It sounds so confusing most of the time. It doesn't have to be. So the whole idea is in one workshop giving all the tools that are relevant so that people can then move along and do the business and can actually save time, save money, see through what's relevant to them and what's just a waste of time. That's the first one.
Yeah. I
Another
mean,
one. Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
go on. Well, for me, I mean, I have been thinking about going independent for a while. The only thing is, I'm still familiarizing myself with the industry, like you said, what the industry needs. And so now I have a bunch of projects that I just need to kind of plan and service and tailor. I'm not even at the point of developing my own website and developing I've just come up with a course that I can actually author and professionalize, and that I haven't
Hmm.
heard being offered anywhere in the world, but it's super exciting.
Okay.
It's going to draw on my background in anthropology. It's going to find a way for artists to articulate themselves better so that they are better represented by the media. Like, as someone who's always worked with artists
Hmm.
and cited them, and artists are often not happy with the way they're represented, so turning it
Hmm.
around and saying this is how the industry works, and it's great. Like, it's very,
Hmm.
now it's been a big hit, so an institution has picked it up, and I need to develop it and just
Oh,
see
wow.
if it exists elsewhere in the world, because if it doesn't, it's something that I could just develop.
Well, even
um,
even if it does, so what?
yeah, no, even if it does, it's fine. It's just the credibility, because I'm thinking in terms of like, what's the methodology I'm going to use? Well, I'm going to use methodology of
Well,
role playing and certain psychological models, like having artists interview themselves or like review themselves, but also
okay.
theater of the oppressed, empowerment techniques, how to deal with a maker who isn't necessarily very articulate or very literary, or interested even in
Hmm.
developing a narrative, but giving them more control over how their work is represented.
Okay, but
So it's,
here I just ask you, like, why is the methodology relevant for anyone who's interested?
what do you mean? What do you mean?
Because here you're worried about how you're going to do it, or you're concerned about how you're going to do it. Like, what methodology will you use, and how will you?
Yeah, because it's a course. So, as I submit it to this institution that's going to take it, they want modules, they want references. And so I want to see if it's actually been taught in this form, because I just came up with the idea. It might exist, I don't know,
It might.
elsewhere in the
It
world.
might. However, it isn't because it exists elsewhere that it's relevant for these people. If even if you were to do exactly the same thing as elsewhere without knowing it, as long as it's relevant, it's relevant.
It
And
is relevant.
what these people want to do is they want to be able to sell the course to their clients.
Right.
Okay, so
Here's,
the way to sell the course, either they're thinking backwards, and thinking backwards would be saying, in this course, like if I were to do it, I'd say, in this course, you will learn the basics of systemic psychology and transactional analysis and lie detection. Those are the things that I work with. But that's the backwards way. There is explaining what will be learned. The other thing is saying what are the key takeaways. Like if I give this is actually the last course I'm doing when breaking down my psychological method, is saying, if you'd like a method to understand the role of emotions in your life and to be able to analyze pretty much any situation, and also understand why you fall into certain predetermined ego states that make no sense, but you do it systematically, and you want to figure out how to break out of this so you can navigate your own life independently. And when people come to you for advice, you actually help them, then this course is for you.
oh, that's a good one.
What I'm doing here is I'm not selling the tools. It's like when somebody buys a drill, they don't want to buy a drill, they buy a hole in the wall. This is really important.
Oh,
So,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm just talking to you about my process, but for artists, I'm gonna be like, if you want more control over how your work is represented, if you want a say in
mhm,
how the narrative is constructed around your work before you get picked up by a gallery, before you
perfect.
end up with an artist agent, this course is for you. So I already know the selling point. Now I actually need to do the work.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's excellent then. And then, I mean, like, what I see with some of the courses is, if you can answer it exactly, how you structure it module by module is
Mhm.
not really that relevant until you're getting close to the time. So I mean, like, even with with your client here, you can ask them, like, I mean, if they ask for a breakdown module by module, you can say, sure, I can send that to you. I'm curious, like, what is it about this that's, why do you need this? Like, are you not sure about the quality of the course? Are you just curious, or is this what you're selling to your clients? And it's not that any of the answers is bad. It's simply really interesting to understand how people think and how they come to deciding that something is relevant to them.
Uh-huh. Yeah, because in my case, I was just trying to be smart, and I just came up with the idea. I was like,
Hmm.
wouldn't it be great if artists gave us all the quotes we needed and we didn't have to like come up with a story and interview them endlessly? Like, if they knew already an
Hmm.
intention behind their practice, or they had a sense of I mean, there will always be surprise encounters. And of course, the writer will always come up with something. But if the artist felt that they articulated, because I work with so many artists that are so talented, but they just are unable to express. And I think sometimes that's okay. Let the work stand for itself. But if you do get to that interview, then there should
Well,
be a way that, you present yourself in a way that makes you feel more in control of how your work is perceived,
I
because that's the first thing that people will
mhm.
see before they see your work. Like, people will read about it first, or they'll,
I
hear
fully
about
I fully agree with this. I'd say if you want to let the work speak for itself, make sure that is the result of specific strategic thinking where you believe it's the best course of action, and it isn't simply the result of you not knowing what the hell to say. Because if that's the case, that you don't know what to say and you don't know how to present yourself, you're really limiting your options. And probably that is not the optimal strategy to being a successful artist. Otherwise, it's like, how is it working out for you? Like, are you really wealthy enough? Are you selling enough? Are you getting the coverage that you want? If you
it.
are, great, don't change it. If you're not, maybe there's something that can be optimized in your behavior and your strategy, and probably delegating the responsibility of your career to some random people who don't care about you and who have got nothing to lose if you fizzle up and burn and burn out and dry out and everybody forgets about you. Why would you delegate the responsibility to them? Because you don't know how to do
Exactly.
any better? Probably. This is all part of my last course, by the way, about the psychology, where we explain all of this. It's a lot of fun.
Sure. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I feel so, like I'm saying, I'm still at the point of maybe survival, just like, oh, I can do this here and I can do this there. But this one, the
Hmm.
course, is something that I think I can actually make money out of and maybe sustain myself with. But, my idea for a business is like an arts academy. So I'm like
Hmm.
way beyond my, scope right now. But I'm just thinking, let me just do at least these projects successful that I have a couple of projects on at the moment that I'm really excited about.
So
Um,
before
yeah.
you get further too much further with them, I'd suggest to that you guesstimate two things. First of all, the earning potential of each project, and rate it
Uh-huh.
between 0 and 3. 3
Hmm.
is very high, and 0
Mhm.
is unbelievably low. Okay? Then
Okay.
you guesstimate the level of effort you need for each of the projects.
Hmm.
3 is very low effort. 3 is always better. Okay? 3 is very low effort. 0 is a tremendously huge amount of effort.
Hmm.
Okay? And then guesstimate the probability that it works. 3, pretty much certain. 0, unbelievably unlikely.
I
And use
can't
this.
estimate the probability now.
Sorry?
I can't estimate the probability now. I'm just
Guesstimate.
working.
Guesstimate.
Oh, I see. I see.
It's
Like in the future.
this is all a guesstimate, because if you've got 10 different projects and you probably have got more than one, let's say imagine you've got 10, where do you start? You start with a low-hanging fruit that's got a high probability. High probability is the most important one. A high
Hmm.
probability that it works. And then second most important thing is that you can actually earn money.
Yeah.
And let me see, there was probability, there was the earning money, and then, oh yeah, then level of effort. Ideally, then you get one that requires a low level of effort. If
Hmm.
it's a huge level of effort, but you're sure to earn a lot of money, it's worth it. If it's a high level of effort, a low probability, and probably next to no money, maybe look for something else to start with. Because your first thing is get cash flow. You need cash
Right.
flow. With no
Yeah.
cash flow, you're stressed. That's bad. It's bad for your health. It's bad for your mental health. It's bad for your clients. You need sufficient cash flow.
Yeah, for
And then
sure.
afterwards you decide how you do it. It's not that one project pays for everything. Some cash flow is more than none. Getting some cash flow is not easy. Get some cash flow in. If you're at 25% of the income you need, it's better than zero.
Of course. Well, I have the cash flow coming in. It's just it will come in much later,
Okay.
and it's a lot at the same time. So again, I'm creating that beautiful, stressful situation. But it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
It's also teach. I mean, it's everything at the same time. There's a publishing ability, but it's just a couple hundred, let's say, dollars. There's the teaching
Yeah.
course that will be much more lucrative, and they're asking me to estimate a price, and it will be over 3 months starting in the fall. And then there's now like a series of 5 stories that I'm working on with an artist show that's about to open in 2 weeks. And also that will come in 6 weeks, but I'm really enjoying it, you know? So
Yeah.
it's a lot of different things, but also I've often worked in what, like, I've been very lucky with work. Things have come to me and then I've gone with them. And editing has been great because it's been a decade long and, 20 years publishing, 10 years editing. So it's been very much my expertise, but it also just came to me, So I am again at the point where things are coming to me, except I do feel much more mature and much more interested in carving my own path. Whereas before I kind of just fell into it. So I was good at it, like working with language. So now I think the danger is just doing a lot of things for, let's say, 1,000, 2,000, however much it
Exactly.
is, but then burning out again or not developing my
That's
own thing that will sustain me and I can focus and specialize. The only problem is, like you said, I am bored easily. I need
yeah.
to be constantly stimulated and I like new things, so
I
it's
understand the issue. I'm sorry, I actually have to go. Somebody's coming here to help with the air conditioning. It was
oh,
great
sorry.
talking with you. Let's be in touch very soon.
Great. So through the center then.
Yes, exactly. And you can, if you look me up on Instagram, @riberson, or you go onto my website, riberson.com, and through the center, I think is the easiest way to do bookings.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I had a great chat. Take care.
Well, see, bye.
Bye.
Bye.